you so much. I hope lunch was nice. I hope you managed to get a cup of tea, have a nice chat. This is Football, My Journey to Here that you're about to have a listen to. We've got an amazing panel for you. My name's Natalie Pirks, sports correspondent for the BBC by day, mummy to 2 little girls by night. The theme of this conference, as you all know, is to hopefully inspire the next generation of women to come into this industry. So much has changed since I've been doing this, 2 decades in broadcast journalism in sport. It's so nice to see so many of you and loads of people out there. It wasn't quite like this 2 decades ago, let me tell you. So a little bit about me, and then I'm going to ask our brilliant panel to have a chat about themselves for a few minutes so we can get to know you a bit more. Like I said, sports correspondent for the BBC, 2 decades, 4 World Cups, 3 Olympics, 3 Commonwealth Games, 3 Euros. I predominantly do the main news bulletins for the BBC, but I also do online, digital, radio, and my job is from anything from a Champions League report on the night very quickly to abuse in sport pieces that take months to legal and get over the line. So I'm very, very blessed that I have a very different job and lots of things that go with it, but enough about me. Let's get you guys just to spend a couple of minutes telling us your name, what you do, and what brought you to this moment, and then we'll have a chat with them, we'll ask them some questions, and at the end, if you guys could maybe think of some questions you'd like to ask them, this is a great opportunity for you to find out just how they got here, and maybe that can inspire you guys for your futures as well. Okay, go for it.
So me first then, okay. So hey everyone, I'm Zarah, I'm 26 years old, and I'm an assistant producer and presenter at Manchester United. I'm also secretary for Salford City Lionesses, which is Salford City FC's women's team, so I'm a bit of a mix with it. I really wasn't sure growing up what to do, to be honest, getting into this career path that I'm on now. I was actually very, very shy and wouldn't speak to a lot of people, and I wish people would probably think, oh, she should shut up now a little bit. But going into it, I feel like university was the time that I actually realised that was something that I wanted to do. I started off doing computer network and video game design because I'm a little bit of a nerd on the side. And I realised on my first day, this is not for me, and then switched to broadcast journalism. And on my first week, there was a lecturer called Andrew Lindsay who was terrific. And he said to me, you need to get in the studio. And he realised that I had a bit of something about me, and then started getting me to read the auto cue and was just like, oh, this is actually really quite cool. We should develop this a little bit more. Realised I'm a little bit odd too, and then was like, go and do a weather report. Yeah, sure, no problem. He didn't give me any of the brief, and I decided to do it in the chill factor, if you don't know. It's a ski slope. There was predicted snow, so I just asked him, could I go on the top of the ski slope and just like slide down on like a rubber ringy? And I told the weather report that way, and he said, yeah, no, this is what you need to do. And I was like, okay. And then from then I was doing lots of different work placements, a little bit of a workaholic. I kind of believe that work isn't work if you love it. And anyone that's around you, treat them as like your family. Because I always think they're kind of like your friends is your family that you get to pick and choose. And that's how it should be, because it will make you thrive a lot more. And so I got into it that way, 10 work placements in my first year, which wasn't wise at the same time. I was sleeping on the top floor of the BBC at one stage, having like little naps in between. I wouldn't recommend that. And then in my first year, there was a work placement opportunity I heard at uni for Manchester United. And it turned out it was actually for 3rd years only, but I decided somehow to sneak myself in there because I was like, I'm a red and I need to work there. And it paid off. And my lecturer, Martin, was just like, yeah, I don't know how, but your name was in this and you've been picked for the 3rd year placements, you've got to go and do it. So I had an amazing internship there, and through that I was talking a lot about United. So Sky got in touch with me and said, oh, we want some United fans against some Liverpool fans. And I was like, yeah, I'll shout out some Scousers, that's fine. And it was at Anfield, which put me off a little bit, but I thought having a go at some Scousers on the home turf would do me absolutely grand. And I went there, and turns out it was live on the telly, and my team captain was Gary Neville, and their team captain was Jamie Carragher. So it felt very intense, and I decided on air to just basically make Jamie Carragher shut up, which Gary Neville enjoyed quite a bit. And through that then, the next day he offered me a job at Salford City Football Club, heading up their content, which was very random. And it was lovely, and he's a great guy because he taught me so much. And I was there for about 4.5 years full-time at the club, managing their content, which was amazing, and presenting for them. And then Manchester United said to me, like, there's a role here where it's assistant producer presenter, doing a little bit of a mix, because I enjoy filming as well as presenting and editing and that kind of thing. That's where my nerdy side comes out. And I decided to do it, and at the same time at Salford, they were launching a women's team, and there's a few of us women at the club at the time. Karen Baird, who's an amazing role model, the chairman, she's fantastic, and they said, oh, we need someone to be there, especially like safeguarding and everything for FA. I said, yeah, cool, so I'll be involved in it, and I've just been involved ever since 2018 in the women's team as well. So yeah, I'm now doing this, and I get to do lots of many things. I get to look after my girls, as I call them, Salford City Lionesses. They're amazing, and they're going to be the biggest women's team in the world one day, let me tell you. They will. So keep an eye out for them. And then at United, I get to have the best of both worlds, be across the entire club, which is good, especially being a female in sport. You don't want to be just a female working in women's football. They have like this one club ethos where I get to then, I'll go and interview the men's manager, Eric, one day, and then straight away in the afternoon, it might be like Mark Skinner. And then it could be going to Malta on the mid-season trip that the women's team did. And then I was in LA last week very randomly for the Isle of United event, going speaking to the fans and getting their stories. So it's a crazy job, and yeah, it was something that was really important, and then something that mattered to me. So I got, during my career, even though I'm only 26, I kind of felt like I was out of it a little bit, and the biggest thing that resonated with me was I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2017, and then ended up being very, very poorly in 2018, which Salford were fantastic with me about. It was very serious, to be fair. Don't need to dampen the mood. So I got told I had 3 weeks to live, which was a very serious thing. I don't know, I've just dropped that in there. You can tell that this is the coping mechanism. And it was one of them that it kind of taught me that you've really got to take every single opportunity that's handed to you and just grab it. And I used to get extremely concerned about everything. Like, this was like a big 10-year plan. It's like, just live for today, enjoy it, and take everything in, and just appreciate everything that's around you, the environments that you're in as well. And I feel like that's something that I bring into work, and it's what I'd highly recommend everyone else to do as well.
Brilliant. I think we're going to enjoy talking to you. Follow that, Helen.
No. Sorry, Helen.
Also, you said your age, and it makes me feel really nervous about saying my age. Do I have to say my age as well?
No, you don't, because I won't be saying it.
33.
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying that.
My name's Helen Hardy. I work now in women's football the whole time, which is wild, which would have been, little Helen Hardy would have been absolutely buzzing. I run a company called Foudys. We're the world's first and only e-commerce platform that's dedicated to official football retail. So you get your WSL Chelsea shirt from us, you get your Lionesses shirt from us, but we also do kit creation for amateur and elite teams. So we represent 2 championship clubs at the moment, London City Lionesses and Lewes FC, and that's growing in the next few months. Hopefully we've got some amazing announcements to make. We signed in the last year with some major brands, including Nike, Adidas, Puma, Umbro, Castore, and the list goes on. That was no mean feat. It took me 2 years to get in front of Nike, and they closed their partnership possibility down about 5 years ago. So about 5 years ago, Nike's changed their strategy to not allow any new partners into the business. They had 23 partners and no one else. And I basically went to them with the women's football strategy around supporting the growth of the women's game through brand awareness and creating an e-commerce platform that spotlighted women's sport. And Nike reopened their partnership program for us, so we became the 24th partner of Nike about 3 months ago, which is unreal. On the side, I launched a football club called Manchester Laces. We're now the largest football club representing women in Manchester with over 550 participants. We're inclusive to all people of all abilities, and we kind of lean on this thing around the misconception around adult women and their entry point into football, and that having not really existed for a lot of people. So we've got 55-year-old women that have come to kick a football for the first time with us at Manchester Laces, and people in their mid-30s, in their late 20s who've never played before that are coming to us for the first time. But then at the other end of the club, we've got a really inclusive first team that just missed out on the title, finished second in the league in Division 1 of amateur football. So kind of representing all aspects of the amateur game. And that's me.
Fantastic. Charlotte, go for it.
Well, that's a lot to follow just from you two. Maybe not quite as exciting. But I'm Charlotte. I'm head of women's football at Copper90. But this is my first job in women's football. For the last maybe 18 years, I've been in men's football. But my journey into football is probably quite unusual. I don't have any qualifications past GCSE, which then meant I couldn't go to uni. My own choice. Turns out you have to go to college to get a qualification, stay in school kids. And I was in a bit of a loss as to when I was 18, what to do. I was doing lots of promo work and got a job doing promo work at a football club outside a football stadium back in the day when it was absolutely appropriate to have girls standing outside football stadiums handing out fixture cards or whatever. I think it was like, come get your photo taken with the... Anyway, we're past that now. But it was kind of the first time that I opened my eyes to jobs in football that weren't on the pitch or weren't physio and was actually, this is something that I'm really interested in, and so found out who was running it, like where does this event come from, who looks after the advertising in football stadiums. I love football, I love being around people, and basically pestered them until they gave me a job at their... as their operations and events assistant. So my very glamorous claim to fame is that I've now been to every single men's toilet in 64 stadiums across the country.
Don't brag about that.
As it turns out, find me another woman who has. As it turns out, when you are very junior working in stadium advertising, where are the majority of the posters in the men's toilets? So there is context to that. So when I say I've literally worked kind of from the bottom up, that's exactly, no pun intended, I genuinely didn't know that. You invited me to speak. but it was very much not knowing, not having any exposure of what jobs off the pitch, what does marketing in football look like, what does advertising to football fans look like, how do we engage in football, like with football fans, and actually it's only something that I've realised now that we only used to put adverts in the men's toilets, which is bizarre because women go to football too, and even back then we went and we were still a decent percentage. And again, because being in such a man's world, it never even crossed my mind to question it and say, why are we only advertising to men when there are women in football too? And this was as a women football fan, so I've gone on quite a journey myself in terms of what does it mean to be a woman in football, both as a fan and working in the game. From then I got moved across to the sales team because it turns out I'm much better at talking to people than putting up posters, which is great. And worked there for a few years and then moved on to TalkSport where I worked on their partnerships team. And it's probably worth saying now that every job that I've had has been through networking and talking to people and asking questions. And that's really like the best advice that I could give because I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for that, and just constantly asking people, what's your job? What do you do? I didn't realize you could, I had no idea that there was a job at a radio station that meant that I could sell sponsorship of a World Cup that would actually get me out to Brazil, and how cool is that? And I just had no idea. Then from then I went and worked at the FA, was on their partnerships team, and was there for about a year. And then from there, I left to start my own business called Her Move, which is an online magazine, or was an online magazine, so we don't do it anymore, that was around creating accessible health and fitness content for women. So that was off the back of working at the FA, just at the time when we were launching our game plan to double the women's game by 2020, which tells you how long ago I was there. And that was when I realised that actually I thought from working in football, working in this real male world, I was talking to some people at lunch today and telling them how I used to revise ahead of every client meeting, or when I was at Sports Revolution working at football stadiums, and a big part of my job in the operations team was going and meeting the commercial directors and commercial managers of football clubs who were all men. And I would have to do I wouldn't have to, but I felt like I had to do my revision before I went to met any club and know who their key players were, what was their last result, if we were doing client hospitality more when I moved over to TalkSport. And I would do so much of the amount of revision that I did before going out to Brazil for the Men's World Cup. You would think I was reporting on it, but I was the only woman on a team of 18 who went out there. So, and I'm glad I did my research because back then you still would get the questions of, do you like football? Are you just here to be on a lads trip? Really, no. Have you seen you? But you would get, you would get those
the audacity.
Those sorts of comments. Oh, and I would get asked, do you know where we're going? I'm like, no, I've just got off the same bus that you have. Or do you know where we're booked for dinner tonight? No, I'm not here as your PA. So yeah, it was Yeah, very interesting. But being in that man's world, and I always felt that I had to prove myself. So I set myself this goal of I want to be at a governing body. I'm going to be running the commercial strategy for a UEFA or an FA, and that's what I want to be because I thought that's the level I had to be to get the kudos. And actually, I got to the FA and it wasn't what I thought it would be. And this is not saying anything bad about the FA, it just wasn't the right fit for me and my personality and how I work. And it was really, really hard to realise that wasn't the right place for me because I had put so much emphasis on selling the next England men's partnership, and that was going to be my hero thing, but I never actually thought about why I wanted that. Now, when I was at the FA and they started to promote the women's game more, all of a sudden I found a space where I didn't have to prove myself, where I was included, where I would have the most amazing meetings with the most amazing people who were just so visionary and inspiring. And I thought, actually, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do. And there just wasn't, just the way that the FA was set up at the time, I still needed to be focused on the men's. There just wasn't, we weren't at the right place to be investing it commercially like it. They've got an amazing commercial team now. But at the time, it just wasn't there. And I thought, actually, what I want to do is something that I really care about. At the same time, I'd read Anna Kessel's Eat, Sweat, Play, which kind of really made me feel seen for the first time as a woman in sport. And then, yeah, me and my friend went and started up her move to do something that actually lit that fire in us and was super exciting, and ran that for a few years. And then Copper90 came calling, actually for a completely different job. I went to talk to them about a business development role, got talking about my love for women's football, the work I was doing at the FA, the work I was doing with her move, and one thing led to another, and they were like, yeah, we think you'll be a great fit at Copper, but not for the business development role. How do you feel about working in women's football for us and heading up our women's football team? I'm like, yeah, brilliant. That sounds great. I'll do it. And no, that's where I've ended up here. And what's hilarious is I know significantly less about women's football than I do men's. Like significantly. Maybe not as much now. Thanks, Helen. But I have never, ever been asked to name the Lionesses team, Tottenham women's team. I've never been asked what Spurs' last few results were, and I'm actually really glad at the moment that I'm not. Anyone that follows the WSL will know why. But it's interesting that now I just get asked, do you play football? When I say I head up women's football, that's what I get asked, do you play? The answer is no, or not very well. But it's so interesting that when you're working in men's football, it's all about how much do you know? And then you work in women's football and it's the do you play? It's like, well, actually, I can just be here because I'm a fan and because I love football fandom and I love what women's football fans is, and so I've really found my place. But very interesting. But sorry, I've waffled for a long time. That's how I got here.
And I think there's so many people in this room that will really, like, it will resonate with them to hear you say that you had to prove yourself and you had to do all this, you know, get all the information in your head because, I mean, we've all been there, I think. So finally, Grace, last but not least, Grace.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name's Grace Vella. I'm the founder of a company called Miss Kick. My journey to here is I grew up playing football. I'm from Liverpool, well near Liverpool, and I have a big family of Liverpool fans, so I didn't really have a choice other than to get towards the game. Started off playing for my local grassroots club, signed for Liverpool when I was 14 and got to travel through the academy set up there, got to play with the likes of Kira Walsh, Katie Zellum, those types of players. Then when I was 17, signed for Manchester City, and for me at that point, I wanted to go and be a professional athlete. Sadly, when I was 18, I got released, and like a lot of young people do, I didn't know who I was anymore, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so went to university, again, no real plan to be honest, in terms of what I wanted to do as a career. Went and did psychology, again, nothing to do with anything I'd ever done before. But when I was on my placement year, I started to reflect a lot about my time in the game and what it meant to me being a young woman. And I felt like there was a real gap and a need for a brand specifically for girls, because when I was growing up, the game wasn't what it is today. And, you know, the pitches were awful, the kits wouldn't fit. There was so many challenges. And I thought, someone needs to do something or create something that is going to try and champion this and change this. So this led to me launching Miss Kick in June 2018 with, like, I didn't even know how to find T-shirts or make a logo or a website, but just kind of stumbled through it when I was at uni, and 4 years on, we're still going. In terms of what the brand does today, we're more than just a clothing brand. Of course, that's primarily what we do. We create products, and up to this point, we've been doing more off-pitch stuff, hoodies, t-shirts, headbands that help spread a message. It's honestly amazing to see how much a girl wearing a headband or a hoodie means to them and how much confidence that gives them on the pitch. But moving more into the performance products as well. We also have a community programme, and Faye's here in the audience, who's part of our community programme. And what happened was in lockdown, we were getting lots of messages to our Instagram account from girls saying that they were missing football, that they were missing playing with their friends. So we created this WhatsApp chat with 36 girls in it, and this has now grown to over 2,500 girls across 20 different countries. We now operate it on a Discord channel and a closed Facebook group, and what that is for them is a safe space for them to be themselves, to connect, to make friends, because as a lot of us probably know in the room, it can be quite daunting being a woman and a young girl in football. So we've had like so many amazing stories that have come off the back of that community. Girls all the way up in Scotland who were the only 2 girls at a football camp, but they both had a miskick headband on, and she went over to him and was like, yeah, you're one of me. You're part of my community. So we're really passionate about that as well in terms of what that gives young people, and through that we do events online, offline. Like I say, we give them access to players and unique experiences that they won't get anywhere else. And finally, we have a Miskick Foundation charity. So when I was just me printing t-shirts in my mum's house, I wanted to make sure what I was creating also facilitated a way to give back. So we donate 2.5% of all our revenue into Miskick Foundation charity, and that's all about levelling the playing field and giving girls free opportunities to get into football.
See, I told you they were good. What's really interesting, like listening to all your stories, which are all completely different, with all different ways into the industry, but all of you have talked about, you've sort of said things like, and then this happened, and it was all really like, I couldn't believe it, but then this happened, and then this happened. But none of those things happened by chance. They all happened because you made it happen. So just tell us a little bit, Zarah, you can tell us a little bit about your sort of journey by being a woman, specifically being a woman in this industry, loving United, knowing you wanted to get there, happening to meet Gary Neville, happening to roast Jamie Carragher, all these things. How has that sort of led to what you do now? And being a woman, how important is that, and what has it meant to your career?
I think it's one of them is that the biggest thing that I've taken from the journey that I've had being a woman is that I've gained a lot more confidence, and I think it's for communities like this, because especially when, like I said at the start of uni, I wasn't saying a single word. I remember the first lecture I had, they had to tell me to speak because I was like too scared, because I felt like even though I had so much kind of passion in my head, I just couldn't put it out there just because there's a lot of stigma. I mean, it's not that long ago that I was in uni, but at the same time, it still feels like that it's moved like leaps and bounds to like the reputation, what it is of women in sport. And especially when I said that I wanted to become this presenter and be part of it, be part of this media world in sport, it was taken for granted, really. You could see some comments, especially online on social media at the time. I mean, I feel like all of us in it that's a little bit more front-facing as well as received maybe some bad comments every now and again. I actually got very quite obsessed with it. And I would always kind of like save the comments and everything. And for some reason, I just thought, oh, maybe like if it was something that I could potentially change, I should change it for them. And I realised that it's actually just a bunch of trolls that don't know what they're talking about. And I think for me, it's realising that I need to really focus on what I'm passionate about, and my passion grows every single day about everything that I do, and people need to have that belief in themselves, especially the talk that we had before. We're talking about, you know, just know that you are good enough, and there are days where you don't feel good enough. You feel absolutely rubbish and you feel pants about it all, but you are here for a reason. And I think as well, it's down to the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. I'm surrounded by a wonderful bunch of people at United and Salford. Even before I was on the phone, some of them telling me that like, oh, you're going to smash it, you're going to be fine, then having all Eccles language, like, go on, gal. And I think that's what you need to, because surrounding yourself with that good community network is only going to make you thrive. And it's girls like these right here with me, that they're the ones that are going to push you, and you celebrate each other's wins. And when people are low, you bring them up just a little bit more. And I think that it's tough being a woman in sport, but not when you're putting yourself in communities like this and putting yourself out there.
100%. Just for me, actually, how many of you in this room feel imposter syndrome? Like when you're around people? Okay, good. It's not just me. I feel that still, and I've been in this industry, you know, like I said, 2 decades. It's crazy the way we do that. I don't know what that is. Is that just a woman thing, or is that just, I don't know. I mean, that's for another time. We can discuss that till the cows come home. But Helen, it struck me that you're Nike's 24th partner. You've done some badass shit. That's amazing. How did you get to the point where you went, no, this is an amazing business strategy. I believe in it, and Nike are gonna want this.
Do you know what's so funny is, I think it was actually my ex we were chatting about. We're still very good friends. We were chatting about it, and when I was in the early days of launching the business and the idea, she was like, it's the way that you relentlessly go at stuff and you just don't drop it. And I said, no, don't be mistaken. What's actually happening is I've gone too far and I can't turn back.
That's so familiar.
Like, that's me. I do it all the time. Manchester Laces was launched because in COVID, I was dreading the thought of going back to the club that I was at. And I look back on my past experiences where I hadn't really enjoyed playing football at an amateur club because I'm not the best player, but my intention was to make friends. So I was like, I'm going to pull 11 mates together. And Raquel's being like, okay, you probably will because that's what you do. And then I was like, I'm going to pull 11 mates together and I'm going to make my own 11-a-side team. And then I was like marching around like, that's what I'm going to do. And then like 100 people later, I was like, oh no. What do I do now? It went too far. And so with Foudys and how it came about, I was at the World Cup in 2019. I've been at the Euros in 2017. And I'm kit obsessed. Like, I've collected football kits since I was a little girl. And in 2019, I don't know whether any of you remember, it was the first time we got our own kits. Like, for me, this was a big deal, but every single nation got built their own kit. And our England away shirt in particular, it was a red rose design. It was like probably the nicest England kit of all time ever. And I've seen the World Cup kits and it still is, and I just get no comment. And so I feel like when that tournament came around, I was expecting to land in France and be like, look, oh my God, look at us all in our England shirts. Like, look at us with Lucy Bronze on our backs. And no one was wearing women's football shirts. And I was like, but you've all traveled to France from all over the world. Why are the American fans wearing shirts with no stars above the crest that represent their 3 World Cup wins? Why are England fans wearing men's shirts? Essentially, when I was talking to fans, they were saying, yeah, like the shirts are out, but where are you getting them? Like, they're all sold out, or you can't find them. Or I'm going on the Sports Direct website and I'm just seeing pictures of Raheem Sterling, or I'm like, I basically can't navigate to find this product. And I, at the time, was like, well, I'm not happy about this. And I love football shirts, so what am I going to do about it? So I was like writing to like info@nike.com, thinking that something would come of that. Or I was like tweeting the clubs, and I was saying, like, how come I'm seeing people walking around Manchester City Centre with Manchester United shirts on and they've got Premier League lettering on the back, but they're representing, Ella Toon or, whoever it was at the time. And essentially Manchester United weren't offering it. In fact, the only club in the WSL that was offering WSL personalisation was Arsenal. So this isn't on. So I started writing to all the clubs. No one replied, shockingly. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy a heat press. I'm going to do it myself. And then again, I just ended in a situation where I'm 3 months in, people are ordering these products from this made-up website. I've never built a website before in my life, but I did it anyway. And there I was printing football shirts in my bedroom, and it got to a tipping point where I was printing too many shirts on the weekends and whenever I could outside of my full-time job, that I was like, I've got a choice here. I either leave my full-time job. At the time I was working for a company called Stagecoach Performing Arts. They do like kids performing arts classes, and I was just working in their marketing team. I'm gonna have to either leave my job and do this, or I'm gonna have to stop doing this like WSL printing shirts and Lionesses shirts business. And I like to think I chose the right path. I left my job. I had no money. I worked in a pub in the evenings. These are the things that people don't tell you about that I know you'll know, Grace.
I worked in a pub as well.
Yeah, did you?
Where I'm from.
I was in the Grafton.
Yeah.
So we're both Manchester-based as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worked in a pub. I was on my own. So I was printing the shirts, like WSL lettering on the back, getting it out the door. And then I was also like marketing the business at the same time. So trying to build up interest through shouting about this. And at the time, the biggest issue was no one knew that like you could get no one had noticed the difference really between getting a WSL shirt and getting a Premier League shirt. So I was going to the stands and I was like, people are still wearing these Premier League shirts, but I'm offering this service now, and the clubs aren't even offering it, and none of the brands are offering it. And it was like a really difficult transition period. And now, you know, I think maybe only just now, to answer your question, do I feel like, whoa, like, I think, how has this happened? I mean, I remember, for me, I like to think of it as little wins, and again, I'm sure that you've had the same, Grace, where something happens. Like, I remember first talking to Liz Bierhoff from Nike. She's big in Nike, and she gave me 20 minutes, and then she had a call with Serena Williams after, so I had 20 minutes with Liz Lotte, and she was in the Netherlands, and then she arrived on the call, but with all her assistants popping into the call as well, like on separate windows, and I'm like, and I'm in my bedroom trying to just like navigate this whole thing. And I remember her being like, this is something, but Nike will not open a contract with you, Helen. I'm sorry, like I know this is gutting, but we just won't make it happen. I remember being like, please try, like ask somebody, let's try. And I remember getting off that call and being like, I didn't care really that it had been a bit of a flop. I was like, I got in front of Liz Bierhoff. Like that was my win, that was my little win. And it keeps happening, and like we signed Castore on Friday, and I'm a Newcastle United fan, so they're going to send us some gear. I'm buzzing about that. So it's like all of these little things that they just keep totting up, and you just kind of have to take those little wins. I don't see it as like an overarching moment.
So stubborn determination seems like a theme for you.
Yeah, it's a theme for all these guys. I know all these guys.
I disagree with you on the shirt, though, by the way, because that England training top for the Euros, the pink one, was delightful.
We're going to have an argument here on stage.
All right, we'll move on. We'll move on. Charlotte, your role now, they sort of, you alluded to it earlier, that they sort of went, oh, we don't think you're right for this, but, you know, do you want to kind of just come and do this? And you were like, yeah. What is your exact role now? How does it work, and how have you grown into it? Because you admitted yourself you didn't know too much about women's football.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know,
every day you're like,
who knows? What do I do? I ask myself that every day. No, it was great. So when I started, or when I interviewed at COP90, they've been investing in women's football since 2015. We were one of the first media companies to go out to Canada and cover it with Soccer Girl Problems, who were based out there. So they'd always been really invested in women's football. In 2019, we were out in France, and we had clubhouses in Lyon and Paris, and invested over £1 million in our coverage of that. So they'd always been really invested in women's football, but it was very top-heavy with how it was led. We had the amazing Beck Smith, who's ex-footballer, and if anyone has ever heard her talk, she's just an amazing person to work with, and she was our director of women's football. So she was brilliant from a very senior point of view, the knowledge that she brought and her connections to the game. She was the face of a lot of the content that we made. But actually, what was really clear that was missing was having somebody on the ground really driving it. Just going back to your point about just sheer determination. Like, what's my job? To be a pain in the arse to everyone at Copper and make sure that women's football is up front and centre. And that was what was missing, and just that, I think, you know, I'm sure that Tom and Simon, my bosses, would say that it was just the enthusiasm that they saw. And there was no job description. It was just come and be the backbone of women's football at COP90, which was terrifying, especially coming into the Euros. And I can only describe my first year at COP90 as being thrown into a washing machine, tumbled around, and you come out clean, and you don't really know how you got there, but everything's fine. And actually, I learned a really big lesson there, because what I didn't do, so I was so excited to get the job, was say, that's brilliant, I really appreciate you making this new role for me. I think it says a lot about Copper as a company. They hire for people, and that culture really comes through. It's such a great place to work, and that's really what made me excited about the job. But in hindsight, what I should have done is said, that's great, but can I have a job description? Which it sounds so silly and so little, and you just think, oh no, I just know what I'm doing. But actually, it's really hard to know if you're doing a good job if you don't know what you're doing. In a business like Copper90 that is quite complicated, we are working on simplifying it, but just in terms of we have our the arm that you guys will probably see from our content creation, the content that we make, the IP that we produce, our social media. But we also have loads behind the scenes in terms of how we work with brands and brand consultancy, our fan research and insight, our whole media arm. And there's so many different areas of the business that actually for one person to figure out how to drive women's football through all of that with no structure was really challenging. Luckily, they are so supportive, and we've actually got there together. We got through the Euros. That was sort of the big focus when I first joined, was let's just put on an amazing Euros, and we absolutely did. We were at all the games, we had loads of great coverage, we had loads of fan interaction. It was like some really great some partnerships with the likes of Sports Direct, with EA, with Pepsi. So we did some really cool stuff. But then over the second half of the year, when the focus quite rightly shifted to the Men's World Cup, I was like, I'm going to take this time to sit down and really figure out, what is my job? What do I need to do? If I got hit by a bus yesterday, what are people going to pick up and know that this is what we're doing? And also, what are my KPIs? What am I going to be measured against? What can I give my CEO to go and talk about in a year's time and say, we set out to do this and this is what we achieved? How can we make sure that we are ever present? How can I make sure that our decision to not have a women's football team, and that's something really deliberate, we don't have a women's football team, that is me, that we have everyone across the business is invested in women's football, and that's super deliberate, but there was never a lack of knowledge of women's football at COP90. In fact, a lot of people knew a hell of a lot more than I did. So actually I didn't get to your point of not knowing loads of women's football. I didn't need to know that. I know about fan culture, and I know about how to engage fans, and that's what I do. That's what I can bring to the table. The knowledge, I'm not there writing the content. I have an amazing editorial team that will write the content for me. So that's absolutely fine. I've got an amazing insight and research team who run all of the fan research. So I don't need to do that. But it's like, what can I do, and what can I bring to the table, and what's the direction? So at the start of the year, we sat down and we had a big strategy, and it's like, yeah, great that it's just me that's heading it up, but you guys all need to do it. There's no lack of knowledge. There's definitely no lack of want. It's like comes from board level down in terms of it being a priority at COP90. But the problem when I first started was everyone's kind of doing it in silo. They're all doing it in their own little bits, so they're not one direction. We would have a women's football strategy going over here, a COP90 strategy going off over here. We had to sit down and say, right, what is COP90 strategy? Like, what do? We tell great stories in football. We revolutionise storytelling. So what should our strategy for women's football be? Revolutionise storytelling in women's football. Who are we to football? We are the heart of fan culture. So our goal for women's football has to be the heart of fan culture for both the men's and the women's. And as soon as we combined the COP90 strategy and overlaid women's football over the top of that, it became really clear, and my job became really easy. So now my job is making sure that every single team have got their own plan that feeds into this, and it makes sense. I'm not asking them to do something alongside their day job. It's not othered. It's not, oh, well, if I've got time to do this, or doing it because it's the right thing to do. We did a huge research project at the start of the year, kind of looking at the women's football fan base, looking at some of the research that's out there at the moment, and actually making sure that we're shifting everyone's mindset from, instead of women's football being the right thing to do and the right thing to invest in, actually it's a really smart thing to do. That the UEFA report that they run after the Euro showed that 1 in 3 new fans to women's football were new to football. That's huge. Like, that's a huge growth opportunity for us. Like, if we are a content business and we want to bring new fans to COP90, what better way to do that than through women's football if you're going to have a third of new people coming in? And actually, you look at our content, and about 60 to 80% of viewers of our videos around women's football are new to the COP90 page. So actually, that's it. I'm now not going to the editorial team saying you need to be writing more women's football because we need to be seen to be doing it. I can now go to them and say, we need to be growing our women's football community because you've got a growth target, and this is your way to get there. Same way with if you're looking like from a commercial point of view, if you're looking at the number that UEFA said that that women's football was going to reach in the next 10 years, something 680 something million. Don't quote me on that. I'm terrible at numbers. But that was just talking about the growth of it from the likes of sponsorship and TV rights, but what that's not taking into consideration is that huge ecosystem that surrounds the explosion of fan culture and the startups I'm sitting on a panel full of that. Your numbers were not included in that, but they're not taking into consideration the women's football is a hotbed of innovation, and as I'm seeing from the current company, so actually there's this huge business opportunity as well. So again, going to the commercial teams who I work with, is not just saying you need to be selling women's football because it's the right thing to do, and you need to be saying to our brands you need to be buying women's football, because actually it's a really, really smart thing to do.
Yeah, commercially.
Because we may have moved out of the CSR bucket that we were in 6-7 years ago, but we're still kind of in that right thing to do area. We're still not in that I'm going to invest in here because it's the right thing, because it's a smart thing to do, and we're never going to get that big level investment. So a big part of my job is internally getting everyone to shift their perceptions in terms of why we're working in women's football, getting them to understand how it fits into the wider business strategy, getting them excited about it, and then externally making sure that is communicated to all of our stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, but you were talking sort of about the importance of a team, and Grace, you seem to start Miss Kick from nothing, and it's just grown really, really quickly, but you alluded to the struggles you had working in pubs. Tell us a little bit about the struggles to get it to where it is now.
I think I was partly naive into what I was getting myself into in the early days. I think I was talking with someone before, that passion kind of drives you through the tough times, but for me, I had an idea, and like I mentioned, I didn't know where you got t-shirts from or anything like that. So the way I overcame this was similar to what Helen was saying about taking them little wins and one step at a time, and surrounding myself with great people. I had the knowledge of the women's football space, the passion, but I've been able to surround myself with people from manufacturing backgrounds, fashion backgrounds, tech backgrounds who can advise me, which has been huge. But for me, it's so hard being an emerging brand and having to come up against the Nikes, the Adidases, the ones who have the sort of bigger budget and bigger reach. But I really believe in what we're building, and for me, that just gets me through them tough times when I might not feel like I know what I'm doing about imposter syndrome and things like that.
People are so important, aren't they? The relationships we build, the networking we do, the people you meet that you can then make a phone call to and say, I've got this idea, is there any way? And I still do that in my career now, these years on. The people I met back then or the people I'll meet today and the people that you guys will meet today could end up really helping you in a week, a month, a year's time. And you'll go, I met that woman that day. She worked at so-and-so. Actually, I might just pick her brain and just drop her a line, because there will be men here too who will help you in your career. So I would say that keep numbers, make friends, make acquaintances. It's so important. It's still so much about who you know, isn't it? In any of our jobs.
Introduce people to people
as
well.
Lean in and make sure that you all help each other. So speaking about people then, who would you say have been sort of your biggest role models, your biggest mentors? Let's go down the line and see. What about you, Zarah?
I think for me, when I was first starting this out, I'd say on the networking side of it, this is going to sound very strange, slide into everyone's DMs.
Not in that way.
Not in that way. But I ended up, anyone that inspired me in some way, Helen McQueen was a massive one that inspired me, and I remember she was the first person to get back to me like, keep doing what you're doing and stuff. So it's quite cool going full circle and like seeing it today.
Yeah.
And it's really nice doing that kind of things. And then for me, mentors-wise, I think, especially with the situation that I was in where I got really sick, and I had like 3 life-saving operations and stuff, and then came back round whilst I was in the workplace. And so for me, although it's not a female, Gary Neville's quite a very big, he's very big in my heart. He's absolute pecks everyone's heads though, and is very annoying, doesn't shut up, but he is all right. And he very much pushed me, and the biggest thing he taught me was that, because he always says to me, at the time before I got ill, I was very much like, this is my plan for like the rest of my life. This is what I'm going to do. Don't worry, I'm going to be doing this in 10 years' time. And it's like, you don't know that. You don't know it at all. You need to just take it step by step. And I said, I'm going to be experienced by this time. It's like, and he said to me, you're not going to be experienced. Experience doesn't exist. You're just going to have experiences. You won't be experienced. He said, you'll be learning something every single day until you're about 50. And I said, well, hopefully I'll be learning it since I'm 60 then. And that really resonated with me. But just the little things that he says, and I hope he doesn't hear this because he'll have a massive ego, but pretty much all the things that he says inspires me every single day, and he's super supportive with it all. And so, yeah.
And male allies are really important in football, I find, because, as much as we are doing good work and as much as we all have each other, we still do need male allies as well to have our backs. What about you, Helen? Who would you say has been your big mentor?
I think at a point when I really needed it, Laura Youngson, and she'll kill me for saying it, she's the founder and CEO of Ida Sports. They created the first ever football boot for women's feet. And I honestly can't remember how Laura and I met. I really can't remember. But I think we were introduced via somebody else, and I was still just had this idea. And like every point that I was like, I really don't think I'm going to do this anymore. And like, I just don't think that Laura would be like, you should do this. And she would talk to me about her strategy. She sent me her first ever forecasting. She explained stuff to me. She never patronized me. I don't think that I realized I was being mentored, and I don't think that she realized she was a mentor, but it just kept happening. And then she did it all. Like, I just remember just thinking she's just totally kick-ass. I don't know if she's actually here today, like at the conference. I've not seen her. But she was like, I remember heavily pregnant when we first met, and then she's just had another baby recently. I just remember being like, wow, you're just someone that super inspires me in the way that you're just so driven towards your idea and your goal, and you're doing it because the product you believe in, you believe it can make a change. I believe it makes a change. I wear Ida boots personally, but that's because I don't want to get ACL injury and I'm old. But I feel like her boots, her idea and her concept all came from a place of like passion. Like, she wanted to change the game. So when she talked to me, it just kind of rubbed off on me, and it really spurred me on in that crucial moment. I think that something that all of us have said today, and I just like want to reiterate, and you've probably all like not realised that you're saying it, is all of us have pivoted. Like, we've hit a moment and gone, and we could have gone, nah, game over, or I'm just going to go and do, something else or a normal job. And all of us had the willingness to pivot. And that's something I think Laura both taught me, because when they first launched their boots, it was if you wouldn't even recognise the boot. They've adapted, they've changed, they've gone through different investment structures, they've gone through different strategies on European market, US market, Australian market. The way that they navigate it has been just constantly ever changing, but never been like, this isn't too much of a mountain for me to climb. And I think all of us have said it at some point. Like, I pivoted probably, I never thought that I'd be doing kit creation. So I never thought I'd be doing amateur kits from scratch. It just kind of happened one day. Someone that bought an Arsenal kit from us was like, do you build kits as well? I was like, we can. And then all of a sudden we're doing, London City Lionesses kits. We're doing like major contracts. We've just signed Wigan Athletic. We're doing major brands because they want to work with a women-led company, the only women-led retail company doing, the official merch. So it's like, it's happened. I was willing to pivot, and from that willingness, it's opened up probably what will be 50 to 60% of our turnover for 2023. So that's how it happens, a willingness. And I think that's just something you just said it about pivoting. You've both said it as well about pivoting and changing and the willingness to do that. And I just think that's like a little anecdotal thing that I picked up.
I mean, you're inspiring me, but I'm not sure what I'll pivot to. We want to take some questions from the floor, but I just want to just quickly, briefly with you to just explain sort of role models and if you could sort of name one that fundamentally put you where you are.
So I think without realising it, Anna Kessel, because just reading, as I kind of mentioned before, reading her book, Eat, Sweat, Play, really made me feel seen, as I kind of got it from all angles. And for being a woman working in football, it was the first time that made me realise I shouldn't put up with that, or actually I thought that was banter, and it's not, and actually made me think twice about the role I was in, and also opened my eyes to women in football, and have made some amazing mentors and friends since then. I think throughout my career I've had some amazing male mentors, mainly just not because they're men, but just because I've worked in a men's environment and they have been my bosses. I think that's just how it's worked. But someone said earlier, never burn your bridges, and I'm really glad that I haven't. And like I mentioned before, I had quite a tricky time when I was at the FA, but even because I didn't burn bridges, I worked through it, and I've got some amazing contacts and mentors here and throughout, and then through Women in Football, I actually mentor lovely Tara over there. Hi. And then Laura Wolf, who's putting on this, is my mentor, and she's just amazing. and will answer the phone at any time. Yeah, she's amazing and it's great. So yeah, big loads of people.
Not burning your bridges is so important.
No matter how hard it is at the time.
No, don't do it. Yeah. Grace, who about you?
Real quick, my main mentor that I've had with Miss Kick is a guy called Mahesh Patel. So he has 30 plus experience in growing fashion brands, and I came across his investment portfolio of 2.5 years ago now, and he was the one who stood up and was like, I really believe in this girl, I really believe in this brand, I see the potential. And just having someone to say that to you makes you really believe in yourself. And he has been, like, there's so many things that I didn't know that I needed to know in terms of trademarks, legals, accountants. He's been able to really lay them foundations for me so I can go and do all the fun stuff. But he's always on the phone. He's just emigrated to Dubai, lucky him. But he's the guy I go to if I've ever got a problem.
Fantastic. Okay, does anybody have any questions? So it'd be great if you had... There we go, brilliant. Go for it. Do we have a mic? There we go, fab.
Hello, my name is Zarah. I recently founded a company that's building an app for upskilling and connecting the grassroots community, participants, players, coaches, everything. So obviously 3 of you are entrepreneurs and you've started your own business in women's football. My question is, what would be your advice for women starting their own companies in football at the moment?
Good question. I think Helen and Grace should take
What
this
an
one.
awesome idea. What an awesome idea. We were talking between me and my sister clubs. So the Laces family were based South London Laces, Hackney Laces, Manchester Laces. We were like, somebody needs to build something that's for the grassroots community, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but just like that, gathering that understanding, but connecting those communities is so key. Like, we have a festival in the summer, bringing together grassroots communities from all over the UK. What an app could do to do, genius. We'll talk after.
Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest piece of advice that I could give to anyone is that it's crucial that you always go back to the central reason that you launched that platform or that idea, or that you move forward with what you were doing. Sometimes you get lost in the bottom line, and investors are on your back quite a lot, and you've got people around you that are trying to pivot you away from what your main objective was. If your main objective is connecting the grassroots community, stay focused on that. My main connection was accessibility for people to women's football merchandise. And then people go, do you want to print Ronaldo shirts? I'm like, no. It's like, you have to stay focused on what your core objective was, because as soon as you go away from that, you lose your authenticity, and you lose what drove you in the first place to want to do this, something that you're passionate about. That would be my advice.
Grace?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help from people. One thing that sprung to mind, I actually DM'd Ben Francis, who owns Gymshark, and he got back to me like a couple of years ago. And just don't be afraid to just ask for help, because you'd be surprised how many people will say yeah and give you half an hour of their time. Don't, like, similar to what Helen was saying, like, your femaleness is so much of a unique selling point, so don't lose that. It's an exciting place to play in, so yeah, just keep going and just send that LinkedIn message.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah? Can you pass the mic? Thank you.
Some of you may have alluded to this, but what piece of advice would you give to your younger selves?
Good question. Let's go down the line. Yeah, I was going to say, you're a lot younger than me.
I'd probably say just, I'm trying to think what I'd say. I'd probably say just don't ever consider giving up. There was many times that I struggled. I had quite bad mental health struggles, and I found it very, very difficult sometimes. I didn't feel like I belonged in this environment, especially because there was no one in my family that was involved in any of this. I've been to uni as one of the first ones. I didn't have any contacts, pure empty contact book, didn't have a single clue what to do, and it was just one of them. Sometimes it's very, very easy to think, just pack it all in, Zarah, what the hell are you doing? And you just got to realise that there are plenty of people that will pick you up when you are down, and you can do it and you can achieve it, because the difference is now is that you want to make your dreams become a reality, and you can actually see it happening. You know, you hear that players talk about, they can see them now, they can see names on back of shirts, but now I can turn on my TV and I can see people like Hayley McQueen, Laura Woods paving that way in like media especially, and there's so many more people that are doing it. And on the flip side of it for me as well, so I'm mixed race as well, so I'm a bit of a pick mix. So I'm Bangladeshi, Ugandan, Asian and Irish. Yeah, oofed. So I wanted to always like represent that as well and really own it and be that female, but also to show that regardless of your background, you can do it. And so I'd probably say just be confident, don't ever give up because no dream is too big.
I can print that on the t-shirt.
Yeah, the whole thing.
I mean, do you charge by letter?
Do we know a guy?
I know a guy.
Always thinking of the business opportunity. And what about you, Helen? What would your advice be?
I was super rigid when I was little about what I was going to be, what I was going to do, and that's what I'm going to do, that's the path I'm on. I was so set in it. And so when you hit those moments of failure, which are inevitable, it's earth-shattering, and it's really difficult to pick yourself back up. But when you have a willingness to be like, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm kind of going to go with the flow on this, I think it makes firstly, I think everything a little bit more exciting, but also opens you up to way more opportunity. When I was little, I wanted to do musical theatre, and I trained at a musical theatre school in Surrey. And I hated it from the moment, and I'd trained all my life. It's all I wanted to do. I didn't even really bother at school because that's what I was going to go, and I was going to go to this specific drama school. That was my life's ambition. And I remember being in week 1 and being like, whoa, I spent years building up to this moment and I hate it. And like, I only lasted 3 years because again, I was too far in. I'd already got there. I was like, I can't go back now.
Stubborn determination again.
So I hated it. I couldn't wait to get out the other side. But what it did is I was lost because of it. And I just think back, if I speak to my younger self, I would say, awesome, like go do your musical theatre stuff, go do your theatre stuff, you love it. It's something that you're passionate about, but be open to other opportunities, be open to the fact that that might not be the thing that you land on, be willing to pivot, be willing to move, be willing to not be so rigid all the time. That'd be what I'd say.
If you can do it in 30 seconds, go.
I can. Mine's quite an easy one, because something that me and Tara talk about a lot. She knows what I'm going to say. Is know your why. I think when you work in football, you can actually be quite like starstruck. And like, let's face it, it's a pretty cool industry to work in. And I think you can get caught up in the, I'm going to do this because I think it's the right thing to do, or I should be here, or loads of people are going to think I'm really cool because I'm working in this job. Like, let's face it, like that is a reason why some people might take jobs, and like I've been there, I've done it. But actually you need to think about your why, and like, why are you doing that? Is that what you want to do? Is that going to fulfill you? And you have to ask yourself some really hard questions. And I wish I had focused on that and not trying to be part of the boys' club. Like know your why and figure, and then like when you're looking at like job interviews and stuff or job descriptions, like why do I want this job? Do I want it because it's cool? Do I want it because it's what I think I should do to go on my path? Or do I think I'm actually genuinely going to get something out of it?
And finally, Grace.
You just go for it. Why not? Why not give it a go? What's the worst that could happen?
Perfect. Listen, I really hope you've got something out of today. I hope that these guys have inspired you to find your tribe, which is really important, but also don't stay in your lane. Don't ever be told, stay in your lane, do this. No, these guys are proof that by thinking outside the box and being able to pivot, you can absolutely end up doing what you want to do. So can we all give them a big round of applause, please? Thank you.